here in Fallout 76, where once again, we're going to make our weekly run at the Purveyor for 1,000 Scrip. We're going to burn it up on 3-star legendary weapons, see if she's got anything good for us this time. We'll find out. Sometimes she loves us, most of the time she hates us, but we all just keep coming back for more. Remember, if you like videos like this, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. There's always plenty to come on the channel, and we do a Scrip video every week just because it's fun and everybody seems to like them. Let's go ahead and get into it and see what Mama Mumbles has for us today. And our first roll of the day is... Come on, Mama Mumbles, give me something good. Mutant Slayer's Minigun with VATS critical shots doing more damage and 90% reduced weight. So, the Mutant Slayer's effect is one of many situational effects in the game. Now, in my opinion, it's one of the more desirable situational effects because there's lots of situations where you're going to use it that are predictable. Farming super mutant locations for XP and legendaries is a super popular activity in Fallout 76, so it's not a bad thing to have. The daily ops with super mutants, we know they're coming. There are events with super mutants. There's different things going on where you can take advantage of this weapon, so not a bad effect to have, not as desirable as most, but of the situational effects, it's one of the better ones. VATS critical shots doing more damage on a heavy weapon doesn't honestly make a ton of sense to me. I'm sure there are heavy gunners that use VATS and do appreciate that effect, but I think they're going to be in the minority here. Most heavy gunners are not going to be investing a lot in agility, so you're not going to get a whole lot out of that. But I digress. The 3rd star, of course, 90% reduced weight. This one I do like because this makes it easier to carry around a weapon like this with a situational effect. And on heavy guns, there aren't a ton of mods to use, so even if you put a few mods on it that kind of cancel out that effect, it's still going to save you some weight and be easier to store and carry around. So it's not a bad effect. It's not a bad combination there to have a situational and a reduced weight. So not an amazing roll, but not bad. Let's see what's next. Okay, next up we've got a Bloodied combat rifle with limb damage and reduced weight again. So the Bloodied effect, it's pretty tough to go wrong with that. That is going to be by far your biggest damage dealer. It's still king of the mountain. The mountain might not be as big as it used to be, but it's still king of that mountain for damage. Extra limb damage, we saw on the lever action rifle in the weapon spotlight earlier this week. That's not doing a whole lot for us on a weapon like this, but I guess it's fine. 90% reduced weight, doesn't hurt to have it. It does reduce the overall weight of the weapon, but it really only affects the base stock weight of the weapon. When you put mods on it, those aren't affected by it. So it's not truly 90% reduced weight when it's all said and done, but it doesn't hurt. The big one here is Bloodied. Unfortunately, I wish it was a handmade or a fixer. But ultimately, even on a combat rifle, it's not bad to have. So your combat rifle, of course, looks like a fixer, talks like a fixer, sounds like a fixer, mods like a fixer, but it does 20% less damage than a fixer. So there's your big drawback to the combat rifle versus the fixer. With that said, setting this up in a proper low health stealth commando build, this weapon's still going to wreck pretty much everything, and you're going to be perfectly happy with it. So not a bad roll. Let's see what Mama Mumbles has for us next. And we've got another combat rifle, but this one is Assassins, so that's much more disappointing than Bloodied. The Assassin's effect, of course, is going to give us an extra 10% damage to humans, so if you're into PvP, you get a little damage buff against other players, but most of us aren't, and you're going to use that as an extra damage buff against human NPCs. So fortunately, most human NPCs are pretty squishy, so that little 10% buff is probably ample, but ultimately, for a situational effect, it's not super desirable. Now, what is desirable is the explosive effect, and that, of course, is our 2nd star here. So explosive, bullets explode for area damage, you boost up your Demolition Expert perk, you're going to get a lot of extra damage from that, so even though Assassins isn't amazing, that explosive effect is still pretty effective. And with the new changes they've made to weapon condition, it's now much more efficient to use an explosive weapon than it used to be. So one of the big drawbacks to that, which was that it made your weapon degrade really fast has now gone away. So that's a big plus in the column. That's a big plus for this weapon. Your third star here, 25% less VATS AP cost. If you're running a VATS Critical Stealth Commando or Stealth Rifleman, that's going to have a big payoff for you as well. So even though Assassins is not amazing, the second and third stars are pretty damn good. So this isn't a bad roll. I would love it if it had a different primary effect, but those second and third effects are pretty good. So, okay, can't really complain too much there. What's next, Mama Mumbles? And our next roll is an Executioner's Flamer with limb damage and 250 damage resistance while reloading. So, this isn't bad either. Executioners has proven to still be pretty good after one Wasteland. I still really do believe that it's just still multiplicative, and at some point they're probably going to quote-unquote fix that. Bethesda, if you're watching, please don't fix that. It's really good. I like it. It's not something you're going to get a lot of use out of on your regular run-of-the-mill enemies, but when you get to your bosses, there is a big payoff there. So that's the trade-off, is you get a little extra damage when you really need it, but your normal run-of-the-mill stuff, your mole miners at Uranium Fever and your regular old enemies running around, you're not really going to get a big effect out of it. So I think that's kind of a good balance there. So it works well. Limb damage could be useful on a flamer. I can't honestly say I've used a flamer all that much, but I'd imagine if I'm going up against a tough enemy with one, being able to slow it down and cripple it couldn't hurt. Little extra damage resistance while reloading is probably a good thing too on a heavy weapon. You're going to reload them fairly often, and they usually take a minute to reload. So that's not bad, but overall the Executioner's effect is probably pretty good here. This one might be worth checking out on a weapon spotlight on a heavy gunner. Let's go ahead and keep moving along. And our next roll is a 2-shot plasma caster with bashing damage and agility. So, unfortunately, we rolled this on my Stealth Commando, and I can't move it to another character because it's a gold bullion weapon. So that kind of sucks. But the 2-shot effect, I don't love that on this weapon. This is one of the few heavy weapons that would actually work in a heavy gunner VATS kind of build, because it's a 1-shot per trigger pull heavy weapon. But it's very cool. It looks awesome. It does do a pretty good amount of damage, but really is best in the hands of a heavy gunner. So, not going to be super useful for me, at least not yet. Bashing damage increased by 40%, completely and utterly worthless perk. You've heard me a million times. That needs to be either removed or changed to something useful, like bashing speed or bashing accuracy that can be used during daily ops or something, because right now it's just pointless. Does nothing. Extra agility. Well, it never hurts to have a little extra agility, and that actually synergizes well with this weapon, which, unlike most heavy guns, you might use in VATS a little more often. So more agility means more AP, means more shots in VATS. So that's a good thing. Going forward, they're going to introduce these changes where you're going to have alternate special builds on your characters. So, maybe that's going to make something like this a little more useful, where I can get this on my Stealth Commando, but my backup build on that character is a heavy gunner with VATS. So I think that's going to make people get a little more creative with things. And I know I certainly will experiment with things that I otherwise didn't. But as it stands, probably not a great one for me. I'm sure there's somebody out there that would have a lot of fun with this weapon, though. All right, we're halfway there, and our next roll is an Instigating Broadsider with limb damage and 15% faster reload. So, in previous videos, I would have spent time decrying this weapon and how cool and fun it can be, but how utterly useless it is because of the way weapon condition works. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They've fixed that problem. So now you can take out a broadsider and you can shoot it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times before it breaks. So you can go out and have as much ridiculous fun as you want, roaming the wasteland with a naval cannon strapped to your arm. If you're going to get a broadsider, an instigating one isn't a bad way to go. Yes, a few months back, instigating was nerfed. But the primary problem there is that basically what it does is it doubles the base damage of the weapon. that's not normally that high. So if you're, say, using something like, say, a combat rifle, doubling 40 or 50 points of damage isn't that much. But on a broadsider, where your base damage is hundreds and hundreds of points of damage, that's pretty significant. Limb damage on a weapon like this, which has an area of effect explosion, that's also good, because you're not going to kill everything in one shot, but you might cripple some legs and keep your group tightly packed together where a follow-up shot can take them out. So I can imagine that would be very useful on a weapon like this. And of course, 15% faster reload doesn't hurt. This is one where you're reloading after every shot, or every couple of 2 or 3 shots if you have the multi-shot canister, but you're still reloading it a lot. So speeding that up is good. There are still issues when it comes to explosive launcher type weapons and how they deal damage and how reliable they are in the way they deal damage. But the big problem was their condition. And fortunately, that problem has been solved. So bravo, Bethesda. Thank you for fixing that. That opens the door to have a lot of fun with a lot of different weapons. Let's move along. Okay, what do we have next? We've got a Stalker's auto grenade launcher with 10% damage while aiming and 15% faster reload. So, this weapon, of course, benefits from that condition change, the same way that the Broadsider did, the same way that a Fat Man does. So it's going to make the auto grenade launcher much more useful than it's ever been. Unfortunately, this one is probably not one you're going to run with. The Stalker's effect, in my opinion, does absolutely nothing. It's worthless in every way, so it should either be fixed, changed, or removed. But that's all there is to that. We'll keep things moving along here and try and stay positive. 10% damage while aiming. It's a nice little buff if you're going to manually aim, but really with this weapon, I think you're primarily going to hip fire this. So I don't think you're going to get a whole lot out of that. 15% faster reload. It's a heavy gun. Heavy guns reload slowly, so speeding that up isn't a bad thing. But ultimately, this weapon is probably too heavy for most players to carry around, considering the lack of really impressive effects. Let's keep moving along. Okay, we've got 3 left. We've got an Instigating Tesla rifle with VATS critical shots doing 50% more damage and faster movement speed while aiming. So, this weapon, the second and third effects, I don't really care about those on this weapon. Realistically, I'm hip firing a Tesla rifle. This is about spamming the button and getting as many tags on enemies as possible. I'm not aiming this thing. I'm not using it in VATS. So at least for me, those effects are kind of pointless. What's not pointless necessarily is the instigating effect. So not going to do huge damage with the instigating effect, but let's say you're going up against a pack of ghouls or a pack of whatever you're going up against. Assuming this works as it says on the tin, then, when it chains through different enemies, which is the main reason you want to use a Tesla rifle, then all of them should be taking a little extra damage if they're full health. So that's a good thing. All in all, is this really the one I'm going to use? No. My preference for this weapon is a quad because the reload is so slow and the magazine is so small, and I'm not really concerned about doing lots of damage with it. But if you don't have access to a quad Tesla rifle and you want to use one, well, an Instigating Tesla, you can do worse than this. So not a bad one. Not super mind-blowingly great, but not a bad roll by any means. We've got 2 left. Next up, we've got, a Nocturnal Double Barrel Shotgun with 25% faster fire rate and 25% less VATS AP cost. So, Nocturnal, I think, is pretty much universally hated. That one, you're going to get more damage at night, but you're going to do less damage during the day. And the damage increase at night is progressive as the night gets later. So it's really a tight window when you're getting any serious damage buff out of this. And more often than not, you're getting a damage debuff. So that's no good for anybody. 25% faster fire rate on a single shot weapon like this is largely pointless. Maybe if you have like superhuman speed clicky fingers or something, then you'll notice a difference, but I think most of us will not. So those first 2 perks, the first one is downright bad. Let's just move on. We don't need to spend all that time on a nocturnal weapon. We'll wrap up with a Ghoul Slayer's Fat Man. So 30% damage to ghouls. VATS critical shots do extra damage. and 50 damage resistance while aiming. So, situational effect. I don't love the situational effects, but you know, some of them are okay. Ghoul Slayers, you can do worse than Ghoul Slayers, but you know, a lot of places that have ghouls are indoors. Like if you go to the golf club, you got to work pretty hard to lure the ghouls outside now. So this is not really an indoor friendly weapon. You are much more likely to kill yourself indoors with this than your enemies, or at least as likely. VATS critical shots doing more damage. My experience with the Fat Man in VATS is that it's pretty unreliable. So I don't love it in VATS. A lot of times in VATS, if your shot misses, then you just get nothing. Nothing happens at all. The shot just disappears, and that's no fun, where if I just shot it and missed by a little bit, I still would have gotten a little something out of it. And then lastly, 50 damage resistance while aiming. That's not a bad thing, but again, this is largely a hip fire weapon. So while I'm happy that weapons like the Fat Man and the Broadsider and all those other explosive launchers got essentially a major buff by fixing the problem with their condition degradation, this one, probably not the one anybody's going to run around with. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to bring us to the end of this trip to the Purveyor. So we got a couple of interesting things today. Nothing totally mind-blowing, but definitely a few decent items. We also got a couple of pieces of total garbage. That's to be expected here. But overall, not a bad trip to the Purveyor. Nothing that really stands out in a major way, but you know, it could have been a lot worse. And I'm sure we've all had trips that have been a lot worse. So with that, I'm going to sign off for the day. Remember, if you like videos like this and you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, hit the like button, and I really do hope I see you next time. Till then, I'm Fisty McRib.